HubSpot's an amazing CRM, but if you're like me, you kind of have this nostalgia for the good old days of when HubSpot was this amazing free CRM. You might find yourself months or years later, and now you're spending thousands of dollars a month on your HubSpot licenses. Today, we're going to talk about how you might be able to save a lot of money on your HubSpot licenses by pairing it with Softr, an amazing application for building your own internal tools and portals on top of the data that you have inside of HubSpot. Hi, I'm Dan Lehman from AutomationHelpers.com, and we're a Softr and CRM implementation partner. If you haven't gotten started with Softr yet, you can do so using the affiliate link in the description below. We've already created a couple videos around HubSpot and Softr, and in one of these we talk about a real estate use case. We're going to keep going with that today. Imagine that I am a contractor and I'm working on some rehab projects for residential real estate, and presumably I'm working with a number of subcontractors. Well, these subcontractors, I want to be able to have access to my HubSpot data, but do I really want to be paying a full license for them? So you can see on the professional plan for HubSpot's Sales Hub that for each additional user, you're going to be paying $90 a month. Now, Softr, again, is that application that lets us build our own tools on top of our HubSpot data. So if we compare this with the HubSpot pricing, we can see that we've got different numbers of users that we can have where we're not paying per user per month. So even on the basic paid plan here, you can see that we're allowed to have 10 internal and 1,000 external app users. Well, what exactly does that mean? So an internal app user is going to be someone who's on your email domain, someone who shares your workspace, you've whitelisted their domain. So in the case of our company, if I'm the contractor, these subs don't work for me. They've got their own email domains and everything like that. So these aren't internal users. These are counted as external users. These are people with a free email domain, or it's not shared as a collaborator in your workspace. So in this case, we're going to be able to have our contractors as these external users. And you can see even on the basic plan here for $49 a month, you can have up to 1,000 external app users. I think that comes down to 4.9 cents a user a month. So it's going to be incredibly affordable for your team to be able to access this data inside of Softr rather than being a paid HubSpot license. Well, at this point, you're probably like, boom, how do I go ahead and make all these people users in my Softr applications? Well, when you get started with Softr and you've created your own application, you can come into the users here, and this is where we can add any of these users that we want to have access. So we could certainly do this manually and add users here and type in the email and the name of people, and then we can generate a temporary password or magic link so they can just click the link and authenticate. But imagine if you really want to take advantage of those 1,000 users, you don't want to sit there and manually add all of your users. So what can you do instead? We can connect to something like Google Sheets, which is going to automatically provision those users for us. So check this out. Inside of a Google Sheet that I created, I've added a name and an email field. I just called this table users, and we're going to be able to connect this to Softr. So I just have 3 people here, but imagine that we have rows and rows of these users that we want to create. Now in Softr, we can connect to a data source for our users. So we can choose our data source, and I'm going to find what I have a connected one for Google Sheets. And here's where we can choose our Google Doc that we have. So I called this one residential rehab. And then from here, we're able to select the sheet, which is going to be our users. Now we just need to map our user field. So I've got my email address, I've got a name of the user, and we're going to plug in our magic link and our created date. And there's a couple other optional fields as well. And from here, we're going to generate magic links so people can just click on these links to be able to log in. Now let's go ahead and save and sync our users. Now you can see that after it's synced, we have all of our users automatically created. So we can use a really easy to use interface like Google Sheets to be able to automatically generate those users. The other really cool thing we can do with our users is add custom user groups, which can control who can do and see what inside of our application. So if we click on the user groups tab, so we can add a new user group, and here we could call it subs or subcontractors, and we could add those users manually here. So we could just choose people individually who've synced over from that users table, or we could add different conditions that automatically process. So maybe we had an extra field in our Google Sheet, and we called it role, and we have them automatically sync in because they're subcontractors. So when it comes to building the different blocks or different components that we have on the screen, we're able to restrict the visibility of these by those user roles that we created. So in this case, if I wanted this top part of the properties themselves to only be visible to people on our team, I could say, let's make it only available to logged in users. And then from here, we could say, which of those user groups is it going to be visible to? And then Softr has really nice preview functionality where you can actually see what this looks like, what that individual experience looks like by clicking on the user that you want it to appear as. So we could click on one of those individual people and see through their lens what they'll be able to have access to, rather than having to constantly log in and log out to preview it as different users. So to recap, Softr can save you a ton of money on your HubSpot licenses by having certain external users in Softr rather than needing to pay for individual user licenses in HubSpot. Now, the second way that Softr can save you a lot of money on HubSpot is if you've been in need of custom objects. Just to review, custom objects for HubSpot can be almost any type of data in HubSpot, including subscriptions, locations, shipments, events, and more. So these would be custom tables, custom objects. Instead of just using contacts and deals out of the box, what if you want to represent that subscription for individuals? Or in the case of real estate, maybe we have different vendors that we're working with, or we have these complex tasks that we want to manage as projects. Now in HubSpot, if you want access to those custom objects, that's going to automatically bump you up to the enterprise plan. You're spending at least $1,500 a month on that. Well, what if you don't need predictive lead scoring? What if you don't need conversation intelligence? If you're really looking just to better represent your business and how your business functions through these custom objects, you don't have to actually pay for this. This is where Softr can come in handy. So remember, we talked about syncing our users, and we can do that with Google Sheets because Softr has multiple different data sources, Google Sheets and Airtable being some of those additional data sources. So in the same way that we had our users table, we could also create these tasks. So in our tasks sheet or our tasks object here, we're tracking all of the different things that we have to do for these residential rehabs. And with each of these different tasks, we're telling it what location it's in of a building. We're saying what phase it's in, if it's demolition, plumbing, flooring. And then we've got the owners, the different users for this to be able to complete it, along with the status of them completing that task. So in Softr, we're able to take a look at our different listings here, but presumably we'd want our subs to be able to click into each one of those projects that we have to see what tasks need to be completed. So this is a perfect use case to create a new page, and we've made one called property details. So now let's go ahead and drill into one of these properties. We've created a new page and we've called this property details. So when we click on one of those properties, this is what's going to open. Now, we just used a very simple block. We showed an image, we showed the address, and we've got some mock text here, but this is where we'd want to be able to now have our additional tasks. So let's go ahead and add a new block. And in this case, we could use a table or we could use a list, but I think this might be nice to actually have it be a Kanban. So let's go ahead and search our blocks for Kanban because this makes sense, kind of a project management feel. Let's add this in underneath, and we can see that right now we have just a bunch of these tasks. We need to actually map this to our data. So the first thing we need to do is choose our data source, and that's coming from Google Sheets. And then we're finding our residential rehab spreadsheet again, and we're choosing, instead of the users this time, we're choosing from the tasks. Now let's go over to our content. In this case, we don't actually have an image, so I'm just going to hide that so we can just have the task name itself. Let's map this heading 1, and we'll map this to the different fields. So you can see these are the same exact fields that we currently have in our Google Sheet itself. So we'll map this one to task. We can click, and that's where we should start to see it reflect some of this data. And then let's put in our location here, and maybe instead of text, let's have this one look more like a tag here. So we'll choose tag, and we'll map this to the location of the house that we're working on. So you can see now we've got living room, kitchen, like that. I'm just gonna strip this label off of it because I don't think we need that. And then we also wanna have the owner of this task. So we can keep that as text. Let's go ahead and put in the owner's name. And again, we'll remove the label here. So you can map these fields however makes most sense to you, but we're just keeping this really simple so it allows people to drag and drop these tasks as they see fit as they complete them. Now, if I scroll up here, I can see our different columns that we're grouping by in our Kanban, and that's not currently mapped to the statuses that I actually have in our Google Sheet. You can see in our Google Sheet, we're calling this status here. So let's go ahead and actually map this to our status field instead, and we'll remove that testing and done, and we'll change this to complete. And now we should have all the statuses mapped correctly. Now let's add our categories. So we can see we have these different tags up here, and we want to change this to locations. We're going to filter this by the location field itself, and then we'll delete out the different tags that we have here and add in our own options. This could be things like kitchen, and we'll add in a couple other options here so that when we do preview this, now we're able to scroll down and we can see we have our different locations. We could say, yep, this is a to-do that I have. I'm Jim. I'm going to go ahead and mark that to in progress, or we could even filter this and say, let's only look at the tasks for the kitchen. Now there's one more issue that we have here, and it's that we only want to show the tasks for this given property. We don't want to show the tasks for all properties on one view here. So if we click into our source, we can add some conditional filters here. And we're going to say if the property ID, if that is equal to, and then now we're looking at the current record inside a HubSpot. So if this matches, it should be the record ID, then we're going to show those different tasks. So if I'm inside of HubSpot and I'm looking at my deal, which is this property, I can grab the record ID right here. So if that's what we want to know, so if I were to copy that, we could match that over here on the property ID so that all of these tasks are going to link across to the deals that we have. Now, when we preview our property again, we can scroll down and we see we only have those 4 tasks. And that's exactly what we want, because if we take a look at our source data here in Google Sheets, we can see that these first 4 tasks are only related to that one property. We're no longer seeing these additional tasks which are related to our other property or our other deal that we're working on. So what if we wanted our subs not to always have to come into the property record to find what they're working on? What if we wanted to have a list of tasks for the subs, so when they log in, they can see, hey, here's everything I need to be working on across all of the different properties that we're at. That would be a great use case for adding a new page. So we can add this new page. We're just going to call this one tasks. We'll save that. Now we could create a table for these tasks that we want to work on, and we'll find that Google Sheet that we want to use. And again, we'll choose tasks. And now our conditional filters would change. So in this case, we would say, hey, let's check that owner email. So back in our Google Sheet, we've got the email address for that owner of that record, of that task that they're working on. And then we could say if that owner's email is, and now we'll look at our logged in user and choose their email. So someone who's going to log in and see their page of tasks will only see the tasks that are relevant to them. So I hope this has been helpful to see how Softr can help you save money in 2 different ways with your HubSpot licenses. One being, you don't have to have as many HubSpot licenses because you can have much more inexpensive users inside of Softr. And if you don't need to be on the enterprise plan, because now you can do custom objects in another tool like Google Sheets and show it all to your users via Softr, this is going to make HubSpot much more affordable for you as well. Go ahead and get started with Softr today by clicking the link in the description below.